Hey, everybody. A lot happened in the Barry Morphew case this week in his hearing. In fact, it was great news for his daughters, who are going to get to see him a little more often and a little easier. Then we're going to jump over to Tennessee and talk a little bit about Summer Wells. We're going to bounce down to Texas and talk about Rosemary Rodriguez. And then we're shooting way north to Connecticut to talk about Lauren Smith Fields. What on earth's happening this week in crime? Well, welcome to the weekly crime recap on Profiling Evil. As we get ramped up, take a minute, hit that like and the subscribe button, and ring the bell so you get all of our notifications. And please think about our channel memberships, especially that new Profiling Evil Academy that kicks off February. Well, Barry Morphew spent a couple of days in court this week, and it turned out to be some really good news for him and for his children. It's also a reminder that he's still facing a murder charge in the disappearance of his wife, Suzanne. Now, his daughter, Mallory, appealed to the judge's heart when she said, quote, "It would be really such a blessing for our dad to be able to be with us," close quote. Well, she was referring to the bond that was preventing him from traveling to see his daughters outside Chaffee County. The judge agreed with the request, even though Suzanne's family wrote a letter of disagreement. Apparently, that didn't matter. Then things got kind of dicey for those of us in the true crime community when a YouTube channel got a hold of the hearing WebEx feed and decided to broadcast it live. Well, once the judge discovered this hearing was being blasted across YouTube, he ordered a recess. And then he chastised folks in the courtroom and told them that they couldn't broadcast anything, including tweeting or emailing during the proceedings. We're going to have to see if there's a contempt of court charge that follows in this one. It's going to be really interesting to watch. Now, I really appreciated the accurate reporting by our friend Lauren Scharf over at Fox News, who said that the judge ruled that the DA's office violated a pretrial publicity order when she appeared on podcasts like ours and when she made statements to the media. This is a tough one because the public deserves the right to hear from the prosecutor, who has the responsibility of ensuring the public is protected. Now, gratefully, there were no sanctions levied in that regard, but it was a pretty big piece of discussion. Now, the next big piece of the hearing was the defense's claim that they still are not receiving timely discovery information. And again, the judge agreed. The unidentified DNA was discussed, and the credibility of the former investigator in this case came into question because he allegedly made some untrue statements on an unrelated personnel issue. This thing is going to continue to be a roller coaster. And you know what? If it does continue to be a roller coaster, May's going to be here before we know it, and then we'll be into the trial. Well, let's talk about Summer Wells. You know, it's been 7 months since Summer disappeared, and the only thing coming out of the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office is an update by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations. Now, TBI and the sheriff really aren't saying much. They say they're continuing to search for Summer. And her family continues to promote the investigation in their own sort of way. They leaned upon a local contact they have to publish a website and periodically post videos on their YouTube channel. It's pretty interesting watching. And of course, they make some pretty interesting demands on there. But it's clear that the family wants to find Summer. Now, this case remains unsolved, and police say there's no evidence that she was abducted. Let me say that again. Police are saying there's no evidence that she was abducted. Now, I think abduction is still a possibility, but I've said from the beginning that homicide and I think more likely wandering off are the most likely scenarios. Personally, I continue to wonder if Summer wandered off into the woods and something happened to her. I mean, think about those videos of her running around the church, playing aggressively in the yard and down at the swimming hole. And all of that just keeps telling me how adventurous this little girl is. The terrain surrounding her home is incredibly rugged. There are so many bodies of water in there. we have to consider an accident. This one might actually get solved one day when a hunter or a hiker stumbles across her remains. Now, maybe she'll turn up somewhere else, who knows? But in a podcast a few nights ago that I watched, Don Wells affirmed that he and Candace have both passed polygraph tests. And Don says he would continue to take them anytime law enforcement would ask him. Well, folks, if you know anything about this case, call 1-800-TBI-FIND and tell me, what's your opinion on this case? And is it changing as this one drags on? Well, now I want to talk about a case that has really bugged me, and it's causing me to scratch my head, quite frankly. It's the case of Lawrence Smith Fields, who inexplicably died just before Christmas. Now, it would take a month for the medical examiner to return a finding that the 23-year-old Connecticut woman died of an overdose, in their opinion. Well, that didn't sit right with her family, who reportedly forced law enforcement to return to her apartment, a place that they consider to be a crime scene, and re-look at the case. I had the opportunity last night to speak with Lauren's family and retired agent Bobby Chacon, as well as Vinnie Politan on Court TV. We expressed concerns that we had about the case, and I'm really interested in you listening to this and what you have to say about the red flags that really bother you. Lauren reportedly met a man who was twice her age on an online dating app. She invited the man to her home the night before she died. He apparently spent the night with her in her bed. Now, Lauren is an African American, and the caller, the boyfriend, the visitor, is a white man. He denies having sex with the woman and says that they passed out on her bed after drinking throughout the night. Well, when he woke the following morning, he discovered her unresponsive and called 911. The medical examiner reported that her death was accidental and it was caused by acute intoxication due to the combined effects of fentanyl, promethazine, hydroxine, and alcohol. Acting Police Chief Rebecca Garcia said, fentanyl is a strong narcotic associated with an epidemic of opioid-related overdose deaths in the United States and in the city of Bridgeport, where they live, and the city of Bridgeport is not immune to the epidemic. Well, the family says she didn't use drugs, and they think that she was murdered. Now, no one's been able to answer questions around the used condom found in her apartment, nor have police said whether or not the man was interrogated about the death. The family says this is about racism and protecting the man that she was dating because he, quote, knows people. Well, listen in to my responses on Court TV with Vinnie Politan and tell me what you think happened in this case.
To lose your daughter, your only daughter, your baby girl, at such a ripe age of 23 years old, and to be treated the way it was treated by Bridgeport Police Station and the department is unacceptable.
That's a dad who is upset. Of course he's upset. Your 23-year-old daughter, who's healthy, is found dead. Dead. Blood coming from her nose, all right? Perfectly healthy. She's been with this guy that she met on a dating app. Some progress. Let's bring in our investigators tonight to talk about this. Joining me in Salt Lake City, Utah, retired police commander and the host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King, and in Los Angeles, California, retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon. And Mike, I've been saying this. I've been jumping up on a soapbox, sometimes on social media, sometimes on the show. I don't know. I just tell everybody that all these departments, and probably on the show I've done it before. Bobby's probably heard it, that these departments need to have someone in place whose job it is to talk to and speak with and comfort families and help them along and treat them with the dignity and respect that every family deserves. Because at the end of the day, the police, the investigators, they all work for us. They all work for us. And you know, your thoughts, Mike, tonight about this story and this case and this investigation right now.
You know, it feels like Groundhog Day when we talk about this, Vinny. I don't know how many times Bobby and I have mentioned the fact that the investigators are consumed with the criminal case and working that case, but the agencies need to have someone who stands in that advocacy position to help the family understand that things are happening, that it doesn't happen as quickly as we'd like, but things are happening. This family deserved to know information and know it quickly and timely. I see all kinds of red flags that kind of trouble me from a different bunch of different angles. I think of that responding officer who may have come into that crime scene with a mindset that this is just another overdose and may have missed really important cues along the way. The family makes such great points about things like the physical evidence that was found on scene. And frankly, if it took 2 weeks to get law enforcement back to collect that evidence, it's probably of not much value evidentiary wise, but it would be so important to do things like clear up the location of that condom and the DNA inside of that versus the individual who was there, especially since it could be information that would impeach his testimony of the fact that they weren't involved. It's odd to me that this guy's twice her age. That's intriguing to me and something that would have caused me to think, why is this person here in this home? What's the relationship? The fentanyl and all the challenges around opioid addiction and other things dealing with prescription drugs makes you say, what medications were in the cabinet prescribed to Lauren? What medications could have interacted in ways so that you can kind of isolate whether this was a situation like a date rape drug that was introduced, or was it clearly an accident? There are just bucket loads of questions in this case.
Bobby Chacon, FBI special agent retired. The DEA is in on this now as well. What are your thoughts about the investigation now? They know fentanyl's involved in her death. At this point, you know, goes back to December 12th. The man who was there now apparently has a lawyer as well. So I don't know how much information you're going to get from him. So what are your thoughts about moving forward on this thing?
Well, I think it's clear what's happening here, Vinny, and I'm less optimistic about the statement from the police department because it seems to me like they're shifting it. They're shifting it into a drug investigation. This is a drug investigation now. He brought drugs into that house. They were illegal. I would hate if he winds up with some slap on the wrist drug charge against him when really he should be facing, you know, the lethal administration of the drug to somebody who may not have known they were ingesting that drug. So I'm even troubled by the medical examiner's dictation that this is an accident. You don't know that until you know exactly how those drugs got into her system. You're going to assume that she voluntarily took them. You don't know that. That has to be established through the forensics and the physical evidence at the crime scene. Unfortunately, since they didn't do a crime scene here, you know, you have a contaminated scene and you can't uncontaminate a scene. That's the tragedy of the situation. So I'm not even sure if this was an accident, and it looks like bringing DEA in, and even some of the wording of the police department statement seems to me to say they're shifting it. Oh, this is now just a drug investigation. This should still be a murder investigation, even if it's only manslaughter, if they can't get intent or whatever. But they should still be looking at this guy as if he potentially, you open a criminal investigation, sometimes you don't end up charging, that's fine. But it's better to start with that from day one and back off it later than to scramble and not treat it as a criminal investigation, and then weeks later, months later, then try to, you know, get the horse back in the barn. So I think that you're trying to kind of placate the family and the community there by maybe looking at this as a drug case. This still should be looked at as a potential homicide case, because we don't know that it's an accident. We don't know that she accidentally overdosed. This could have been a guy who was administering drugs to her to get her into a compromised state so he could have sex with her, and then she died from all those drugs that were in her system because she wasn't a drug user. And this is serious drugs that were found in her system.
Absolutely. To me, it's very simple. You know, two healthy people go into a room, one comes out alive, one is dead. Let's figure out what happened here. All right.
Well, there you go. I mean, do you think Lauren overdosed on something that she voluntarily consumed? Or was there something far more criminal happening here? How should the police have responded when they first received the call, in your opinion? And before you answer my question, take a minute and look up the case of a California teen who was charged with the murder of a 12-year-old girl after he sold her fentanyl, leading to a fatal overdose. I mean, do you think this case will become a homicide investigation, or is it going to stay a drug case where they apparently have moved the case? Remember, police turned the case over to the Drug Enforcement Administration to help him in this thing. This is going to be interesting to watch. Hey, well, now let's jump down to Texas and Rosemary Rodriguez's case. This is a case my buddy Jared Lysick of Adventures with Purpose asked me to look into some time ago. You know, I think the family of Rosemary is going to get some closure really soon. You see, on December 30th, police in Kilgore, Texas, discovered the missing woman's car in some heavy brush just off the road near her boyfriend's house. Rosemary was actually last seen leaving his home at about 7 p.m. on October 7th, 2019. Well, her family reported her missing the following day, but she simply vanished, and for 2 years remained vanished until this last December. Well, as police were extracting the vehicle from the brush, they discovered human remains inside. Now, here's what I don't know. I don't know if the vehicle was hidden in there or if it ended up in there as part of an accident and went off the road and crashed. I mean, it's possible that she even drove herself to that location. But regardless, the medical examiner's report is going to show physical injuries and hopefully answer some of the questions that linger on this case. I mean, most importantly, if the body inside was truly Rosemary Rodriguez. If it is, this family at least will have the privilege of burying their loved one, something that too many families with missing loved ones are denied. Well, now I want to talk a little bit about Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. Finally, the FBI says it's closing the case in the murder of Gabby Petito. In a press release just a few days ago, the Bureau stated they found a confession of the murder inside Brian Laundrie's notebook, which they recovered near his remains after he committed suicide in a Florida swamp. Now, as you may recall, Laundrie's partial remains were found near the backpack that belonged to him down in the Mayakahatchee, and I hope I got that right, Creek Park in Sarasota County, Florida. Well, inside of a waterproof bag was the notebook that contained written statements by Laundrie where he claimed responsibility for Gabby's death. The FBI says they notified her parents about all of it and their intent to close the case. I think it's really important to note that the investigation didn't uncover anything new or suggest any kind of conspiracy in the death. It placed all the responsibility on Laundrie. You know, one of the cool things is this is a case that proves that the true crime community can have a positive influence on criminal cases when reported and then followed up on properly. The FBI in their statement said, quote, "The public's role in helping us in this endeavor was invaluable as the investigation covered in the media around the world." It went on to say, "On behalf of the FBI, I want to express our deepest appreciation to the public for the thousands of tips that were provided during the investigation and to our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners for their work throughout the investigation," close quote. Well, if you think back, immediately suspicion fell on Laundrie when he returned home without Gabby, in her vehicle, I might add, and he immediately sought legal counsel and refused to speak to police or to Gabby's parents. The Sarasota Medical Examiner's Office, when it's all been said and done, concluded that Brian Laundrie died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Well, folks, make sure you check out the entire court TV discussion on the Lauren Smith Fields case on their news channel. This one is really heating up, and there's more to come in it. You can find Profiling Evil on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you like podcasts, go to Profiling Evil on your favorite podcast platform. And above all, don't forget to check us out on the World Wide Web at profilingevil.com. And again, please consider joining our channel memberships, especially the Profiling Evil Academy. Links are down below. And while you're at it, hit that like and the subscribe button and ring that bell. Thanks a lot for all your support, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.